Hello students, today we are going to study the mandible. The mandible or the bone of the lower jaw is the strongest and largest bone of the face and only movable bone of the skull. Now the mandible develops in the first pharyngeal arch by two halves which unite with each other by 2 years of age. So let's see the bony features and attachments of the mandible. So, the mandible basically comprises of two halves which are joined to each other in the midline by a faint ridge known as the symphysis menti, which is a fibrous joint. Now, each half comprises of the body and a vertical quadrilateral plate of bone known as the ramus. Now, if we see the two halves, then the body is U-shaped or horseshoe shaped, and the features of the body are that it has an external surface or outer surface and an inner surface, a superior border and an inferior border. Now the superior border is also known as the alveolar process since it contains sockets for the teeth. So the sockets would be 2 for incisors, 1 for canine, 2 premolars and the 3 molars. The inferior border is also called the base of the mandible. On both sides of the symphysis menti, the inferior border shows 2 shallow depressions known as the digastric fossa. Now, near the interval between the 2 premolar teeth and almost midway between the superior and inferior borders in adults, you have a foramen known as the mental foramen through which the mental vessels and nerves pass. Now, if you look carefully, this symphysis menti in the lower portion, it broadens out into a triangle. This triangle is known as the mental protuberance, and at the inferior angles of this mental protuberance are 2 small tubercles known as the mental tubercles. So these are the 2 mental tubercles and this hole is known as the mental protuberance. Now, roughly arising from the mental tubercle and going upwards and backwards like this up to the anterior border of ramus is a faint line known as the oblique line. So on both sides here you have the oblique line. Now opposite and right below the incisor socket for the incisor teeth, you have a shallow depression known as the incisive fossa. Now we will look at the features on the inner surface of the body. So firstly, there is right from behind the third molar going up to the symphysis is a prominent ridge known as the mylohyoid line. This is the mylohyoid line, and right below it is a depression, a groove known as the mylohyoid groove. Now in the center, right behind the symphysis menti are 4 small tubercles known as the superior and inferior genial tubercles, also known as the mental spine. So these are the features on the inner surface of the body. Now the mylohyoid line, right above the mylohyoid line is this shallow depression known as the sublingual fossa, which lodges the sublingual gland. Now below the posterior part of the mylohyoid line is a larger depression known as the submandibular fossa, which lodges the submandibular gland. Now coming to the features of the ramus. Now if you look at the ramus, as I said, it is a rough quadrilateral, so it has 2 surfaces, a lateral surface and a medial surface, and 4 borders, a superior border, an anterior border, a posterior border and the inferior border. Now this is the anterior border, which is thinner than the posterior border. The superior border has a prominent notch known as the mandibular notch. Now on both sides of this notch are two processes of the ramus. The one placed anteriorly is known as the coronoid process. It is a triangular projection of bone going upwards. Posteriorly placed is the condylar process, which is expanded on top from side to side. So the expanded upper part is known as the head. The narrow constricted part right below it is known as the neck of the condylar process. The posterior border is this. It meets the inferior border at this point, which is known as the angle of mandible, which is roughly 110 to 120 degrees in case of adults, whereas in case of newborn and infants who are still edentulous as well as in old age, this angle increases because the ramus becomes obtuse. Like there will be more of an obtuse angle between the body and the ramus, and this angle increases to roughly 140 degrees. Now the inferior border of the ramus is continuous with the base of the mandible. So we have seen the features of the ramus. Now let us look at the lateral surface of the ramus. You can see faint oblique ridges over here, which are actually caused by the intermuscular septa of the muscle. Okay. If you look at the medial surface of the ramus, you find an opening roughly in the middle of this surface. This is known as the mandibular foramen. The mandibular foramen is guarded by this. This is the lingula, or a tongue-like projection of bone, which is actually caused by the pull of the sphenomandibular ligament, which is attached to it. Now, this mandibular foramen leads to a mandibular canal which runs inside this bone from here in the downward direction, downwards and forwards. Okay. Now this mandibular foramen transmits the inferior alveolar nerve and vessels. Right below this is this mandibular groove, which we have already seen in the body. Now coming to the muscles that are attached to the mandible. First we'll talk about the body. So I told you this was the oblique line extending from the mental tubercle to right up to the anterior border of ramus. So the posterior part of this oblique line gives origin to the muscle buccinator, whereas anteriorly in the front, this oblique line gives attachment to two muscles, that is the depressor labii inferioris in front and the depressor anguli oris behind. Now the area below the oblique line is overlapped by the attachment of the platysma. The incisive fossa gives origin to the muscle mentalis as well as few slips of orbicularis oris muscle. The mylohyoid groove gives attachment to the mylohyoid muscle along the whole of its length. The posterior part of the mylohyoid line gives origin to the superior constrictor muscle. The attachment of the superior constrictor muscle goes on to right behind the third molar, where there exists a pterygomandibular raphe, which is formed by the interlacing of fibers of two muscles, that is buccinator coming from the outer surface and the superior constrictor of the pharynx from the inner surface. Now, the superior genial tubercles give origin to the muscle genioglossus and the inferior genial tubercles give origin to the geniohyoid muscle. The anterior belly of digastric arises from the digastric fossa. Now throughout the length of the base or the inferior border of the mandible is attached the deep cervical fascia of the neck. Now talking about the muscles that are attached to the ramus. Now the ramus gives insertion to all the 4 muscles of mastication, right? So they are, the masseter muscle is inserted onto the whole of the outer surface except the posterior-superior part, which is overlapped by the parotid gland. We can see faint oblique ridges over here, which are formed by the intermuscular septa of the masseter muscle. Now, the temporalis muscle is attached to the whole of the coronoid process. In fact, the coronoid process itself is formed by the pull of the temporalis muscle, which is a very strong anti-gravity muscle of mastication, right? So along the anterior border, the tip and the inner surface is the attachment of temporalis muscle. Now the lateral pterygoid muscle is attached to the pterygoid fovea, whereas the medial pterygoid muscle is attached on this inner surface near the angle of the mandible. Here too you can see faint oblique ridges which are caused by the intermuscular septa of the masseter muscle. So these were the bony features and attachments of the mandible. Hope you have understood well.